It all began in a grand chase. Officer Knight and his dog, Greg, were trying to hunt down a notorious villain and evil cat called Petey. In the hunt for him, Petey busted out of a tunnel, and while Officer Knight was trying to chase him down, he launched himself high up to the sky, and they were about to fall to their death when his smart dog handed him a parachute which slowed the pace, but they soon got stuck at the top of the building while their police car crashed down. Petey the cat spotted them and laughed as he threw a bomb and left. Petey explains to his assistant that Officer Knight got skills to chase, but he was a dumb cop while his dog was smart, but got no skills, so his assistant foresaw a horrible idea. That's if they were ever conjoined together. Her foreshadowing came to pass when Officer Knight tried defusing the bomb instead of escaping, since there was no one in the building. He cut the wrong wire and the bomb exploded. The officer and his dog were rushed to the hospital where the doctors relayed the terrible news to them, stating the officer's head was damaged, while the dog's body was damaged, so the docs thought of a great idea to save them by sewing the head of his dog, Greg, into the officer's body. The surgical procedure was done as Officer Knight and dog Greg had become a super soldier. They had become Dogman. Dogman rejoined the police force and was now stronger and better than ever, as he had the brain and the skills to take down criminals and became the talk of the town. This made the police chief jealous, as he was never seen on the news and confronts the reporter about it, but she suggested he had to do something incredible for a story to be made about him. Dogman arrived at his home, but it seemed to be empty now. He thought of the various pleasant experiences he had with his wife and dog, but now it seems hollow. Dogman was about leaving when he bumped into an agent who informed him that his wife was preparing the apartment and had cleared out all his stuff, as she doesn't want to be with a half-man, half-dog creature. Dogman was sad as he thought about it outside when one of the deputies arrived to give him a ride back to the station. Meanwhile, Petey the cat was furious about the ultimate soldier, Dogman, he created while trying to eliminate them, so he asked his assistant for tips of how best to take out a dog, but his assistant didn't respond to him as he had fired her earlier. She packed her stuffs and left. Petey, overconfident that he doesn't need her, decided to build a giant vacuum cleaner to take out Dogman. The police chief was kind of jealous as his officers seemed to love Dogman, but he also had an encounter with Dogman and seemed to like him. But they were on the line of duty, so he ordered Dogman to go capture Petey. It appears Petey the cat had completed the creation of his giant vacuum cleaner and chased Dogman into the ocean with it, but the plan failed as Dogman was successfully able to capture and handcuff Petey and takes him to the cat jail. It didn't take long as Petey escaped jail again and returned with a newly designed weapon to eliminate Dogman, but all to no avail as Dogman captured him again and returned him to the cat jail again. The sequence was repetitive as it seemed to go on and on, as it appears Dogman's effort was frustrated by weak security in the cat jail. Dogman was with the chief in his office one day when the mayor arrived. The chief trembles as the mayor informed him that Petey had escaped again, and she blames Dogman for it. The chief tried explaining to her that there was a flaw in the security of the cat jail, but because the mayor's brother was the head of security there, she decides to pin the blame on Dogman and dismissed him from the case. Dogman returned home, sad as he cried for a while before going to bed. Petey arrived at his lair and found it untidy as his former assistant arrived at that moment to pick up her forgotten charger when he ordered her to tidy the place, but she reminded him that he fired her and won't be able to get anyone else, as the only person that could stand him was him. Petey thought of what she said and decides to build a cloning machine to make more of him. The chief ordered Dogman back at the station, and he returned swiftly as the chief had a new task for him. His new task was to guide a dead, evil, kinetic fish as some scientist plans to study its brains to advance their knowledge. Meanwhile, the scientist was given a speech about the fish as Petey happened to be watching. He brought his various list of ideas to take out Dogman, but it appears he had checked them all, and he was sad as he had no idea left when he overheard the scientist talking about how to resuscitate the evil fish. He then had a brilliant idea to steal the fish, revive it, and program it to eliminate Dogman. The chief was given Dogman instructions on how not to get distracted while his eyes were on the monitors, but unbeknownst to them, Petey had already started making his way into the facility, taking advantage of Dogman's distraction. The instructions were over, and as the chief left, Dogman looked through the monitors and realized the fish was gone, so he sounded the alarm and rushed out. It turns out Petey stole it and flew away, so Dogman, using the reporter's drone, chased Petey but lost him. Petey returned to his lair and began the programming process. The evil kinetic fish was now programmed to take out all doggy, so all that was left for Petey was to resuscitate the fish to begin its work. Dogman handed a flash to the chief, and as they glanced through it, they spotted Petey. Meanwhile, Petey had begun the creation of his clone. He used the DNA from one of his whiskers and embedded it into the machine, and in no time the clone was created, but Petey was disappointed as the clone was a child, and it would take years for him to become the evil villain that Petey wants him to be. The chief informed Dogman that this was their chance to capture Petey by using the fish as an excuse. Petey wasn't impressed with his clone and wanted him to stay back while the ghost revives the fish, but he was shocked as the baby cat had already arrived at the flying bug. So Petey had no choice but to take him along. They arrived at the smoke factory, and as Petey was about placing the fish in one of the holes to revive him, the baby cat began playing around with the various buttons in the flying bug, causing it to malfunction. So the fish fell into the wrong hole and got stuck, leaving Petey disappointed as he left. The chief and Dogman had begun their search for Petey, and while they were doing so, Petey gave his baby cat up for adoption, but no one was ready to adopt him. The baby cat got distracted, and Petey, on noticing this, took advantage and left with his flying bug, leaving the baby cat all alone in the street. Dogman spotted Petey and was about chasing him when his attention was brought to the baby cat, who was about getting hit by a truck in the middle of the road. Dogman had no choice but to let Petey escape as he rescued the baby cat, and on realizing it was lonely, took him home and even read some bedtime stories to put him to bed. Petey returned to his lair happy about leaving his clone child behind when he found a book written about him by his child, making him emotional for a moment, but he shrugged it off. In the meantime, Dogman and the baby cat had bonded so well as they ate together, played the piano together, and also hanged out together. Dogman was delighted to find a companion, as he had been lonely for a while now. Back at the factory, the emergency alarm had gone off, and as the workers tried finding the source of the problem, they opened up a closet and found the evil dead fish in it, and as they removed it, their machines were stabilized. Petey had just finished the creation of his droid, capable of finding anything, when his assistant came around to piss him off. She showed him a picture of his cloned baby cat hanging out with Dogman, and this pisses him off as he instructed his droid to help him find his child. The droid led him to Dogman's home and helps him retrieve the cat, and he took him back to his lair. There he showed the cat his room and explained to the child that he left him out there so he can become tough and evil, just like the way his father left him. Still surprised as to why his clone child wasn't evil, his child suggested that maybe Petey still had good inside him. Petey succumbed to pressure and slept with his child that night, and while Petey was still asleep, his child instructed the droid as it scanned the child and began to search for Petey's father. Dogman woke up and was in distress on realizing that the cloned cat was gone. It hurt him so bad, so he made a call to the reporter, and she arrived at the apartment as he informed her of the whole ordeal. The reporter made the news about little Petey, and soon they began the search for him. Petey watched the news and was furious, and he plans to create something to take out Dogman once and for all. He was still at it when his droid arrived with his father, leaving him in shock. Little Petey introduced himself to his grandpa, who doesn't seem to care about his son in front of him, and only cared about the food in Petey's lair. Back at the living spray factory, the workers tossed the dead fish around as it hits a pipe, causing a leakage, and the living spray was released. The spray was able to revive the evil kinetic fish. It also brought the factory to life as the evil fish and evil factory set out to cause havoc and complete their mission to eliminate Dogman. Dogman wasn't happy with little Petey for bringing his father back and left him behind as he had already created his next weapon to take out Dogman. Dogman was still with the reporter when Petey attacked him, and as the fight was ongoing, the evil fish also arrived to cause havoc. Little Petey spotted Dogman on the news and also left to find him. The fight was intense, but Dogman prevailed and captured Petey when little Petey arrived. Dogman soon realized little Petey was Petey's son, and he has to make a choice. They were still at it when the evil fish and evil factory arrived. It turns out Petey made an error in his programming as little Petey was captured and taken away instead of Dogman. Petey, on noticing this, put his beef aside and decides to partner with Dogman so they can rescue his son together. Peter fashioned a big robot as they both controlled it together. They confronted the evil fish and engaged in a battle with the evil factory. They defeated the factory, but it released its living spray chemical across the surrounding buildings. Dogman and Petey were able to free little Petey from the evil fish grip, and he ran off, but to their surprise, the surrounding building had all come to life as a result of the living spray. So, Dogman and Petey now have a huge task of taking out the surrounding evil buildings. It was a mess as the chief of police also arrived at the scene, trying to get people to evacuate from the vicinity. Dogman and Petey were almost defeated when little Petey arrived. He appeared to be in control of the droid as he used it to take out the evil buildings. The droid was struck as it fell off as Petey and Dogman rushed to rescue little Petey. Petey soon realized that the evil fish was never going to stop coming after little Petey, so he handed little Petey to Dogman and got into the droid to pose as little Petey while they escaped. The evil fish arrived and on noticing Petey, picked him up and sought for the best way to eliminate him. Meanwhile, Dogman and little Petey sought for a way to rescue Petey. The evil fish spotted a volcano and was delighted. Petey was about to be dropped into the volcano when Dogman and little Petey arrived in a cannon truck. Little Petey was able to talk with the evil fish as the fish revealed to him that he became evil because he had no friends. Little Petey was able to make the evil fish good again, and as a result of this, it began to lose its powers, which would mean Petey falling into the volcano. So, Dogman acted fast by placing a tennis ball into the cannon and fired it as it deflects the droid away from the volcano, and Petey was saved. The chief arrived at that moment and handcuffed the fish, and also tried arresting Petey when the mayor arrived, stating that Petey had been pardoned by the governor. They wanted to take some pics together, but Petey didn't like the love shown to him as he felt he was evil and selfish as he left the scene with his son. On their way home, they spotted Petey's dad on the road with a truck. Getting home, they realized Grandpa Petey had stolen Petey's stuff as the home was empty. Petey now made it clear to his son how some people never change. They made their way out as little Petey was now beginning to realize how cruel the world was, but Petey had a change of heart and no longer wanted his son to be evil, so he sought for a way to do that. Dogman was at home feeling lonely when he heard a knock on the door. It turned out to be Petey, and he wanted his son to stay with Dogman for a while. With this, they were no longer arch rivals, and that was how the movie ended. Stay tuned for more mind-blowing recaps on its mythical, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.